Before we dive into today's video, I want to give a quick shameless plug to Big Tex Ordnance, who have been one of the supporters of the channel from very early on. They're also huge supporters of Average Joes and the gun community in general. Anything that we talk about in here, any accessories you might be looking for this holiday season, make sure you use the link down below. Use goonlife, it saves you some money and it helps the channel out a little bit. Today I want to talk about pistol optics, and all of these have been provided for by Big Tex Ordnance, whether it's me purchasing them. Actually, no, I purchased all these. But I did get early access from them on one of these, and I've actually been shooting it for a while, and I meant to do a video on it a while back, but yeah, we'll deal with that later. But when we talk about pistol optics, they've become more and more commonplace in the industry, and more departments are switching over to them. More and more individuals are using them, especially in concealed carry. Now, if you're interested in pistol optics as a whole and you want to know more about it, or you want to improve your training on it, check out Centrifuge. I'll link Dano, his account right here. I also put it down in the description, along with Scott Jedlinski, Jedi. Check him out. They both have great red dot courses. They also have some content out on YouTube that you can check out, and Dano's more on like Instagram and Facebook. But great information about red dots there. And one of the, I think for me, the greatest benefits of red dots is that it allows you to be threat focused. With iron sights, you have to focus, you're trying to focus the two planes, or actually three planes, because you've got your front sight post, your rear sight post, and then you've got your target. And everyone is always taught front sight post focus, and then you just cover your target with that. The issue then becomes that as you want to focus on the threat, you lose your sights. But with a red dot, just like with a rifle, it allows you to take your red dot and just put it over your target, put it over whatever it is you're aiming at, whether that's for competitive shooting, for self-defense, and it just allows you to be more focused on the target and not necessarily so focused on the front sight, which aids a lot of people, especially new shooters, people who have eyesight issues. And I actually got to film with Dano down in Houston, and Houston was one of the first big metropolitan departments that is switching their entire academy over to red dot first, then irons. Everywhere else is typically you learn on the academy, you learn iron sights, and then as things are changed or are approved, we know departments, for those either in law enforcement, aren't usually exactly fast when it comes to progressive things, especially with firearms. There's a whole lot of hoops you have to jump through to make changes. And they were one of the first ones to do it. And then so we got to film their first group of instructors who were going to be teaching the first academy class that was going to be all red dot. I think they were going to spend majority of their time learning red dot, and I think they were only going to spend 2 days learning iron sights. Don't quote me on that. This was a while back. But it was cool to see that progression, and I've seen that more and more. And because of that, we see more and more companies coming out with red dots for pistols. Now, the tried and true, the one that everybody knows, that everybody goes to, is the RMR, the Type 2. And it's the most durable. It's been the one that people trust the most, that most people have time on. There's a lot of benefits to running it, and most people are just familiar with it and use it. Now, this has kind of become the baseline, right? The standard that everybody knows. And from this, there have been things that people want changed, so we look at the features of the RMR, and there's a few things that people have wanted to improve upon. And the ones that I hear over and over again are that, we want a larger window, or we want easier battery access, because one of the issues with the RMR is that in order to change your battery, you have to take it off, albeit it has great battery life. When you do have to change the battery, you have to take it off, and then you have to re-zero the optics. So for whatever reason, if you're not on top of your battery schedule and you happen to change your battery mid-shift, or you don't have time to go to the range to re-zero after the battery goes dead, it creates issues, right? Because then you're either running with an optic that might not be zeroed, or you choose not to change the battery and you're back to iron sights. So we have larger window, better battery access, and as of late, closed emitter. I think a lot of people have found the issue with open emitters, especially if you live in rainy environments, or you're like here. If you ever get an urban prone in this Texas clay mud that we have, if you get it in there on the emitter, it's a pain to get out, to say the least, and it's really tough to get it back to being as clear as it could be. But what ends up happening, for those of you who don't know, if you obstruct your emitter in some way with water or lint, if you're EDC carrying, it can create a starburst effect where you have multiple red dots in your window, and you don't know which one is the correct one. You have to kind of guess and hope that you know which one it is, or you resort to your iron sights. The other thing is people like now have become accustomed to this. So now that other red dots are on the market, they want to make sure that the battery life either equals or surpasses what is available. People don't want to be changing batteries, multiple times a year or, every month, a la, Acro P1 or other optics like that. And then people have asked for it to be more clear. So you do with pistol optics get a little bit of distortion, and people have wanted clearer glass, not so much blue tint. They want more sharpness out of it. So it's like, okay, if we're gonna make other optics, let's make them better. And that's one of the other things that's come up. And then people want it to be duty rated like the RMR is. Now, the RMR, I think, still is the class standard when it comes to being quote unquote duty rated. And we can talk more about that later. But when it comes to optics, this is proven to be the most durable based on not any like one person's testing, but just across the board. So many people have used it. So many people have not had issues with it being durable when it comes to running it in classes, racking it off of things, dropping it, whatever it may be. It has stood up to the test of time in a very large sample being the consumer market. But at the end of the day, when it comes to pistol optics, there are going to be trade-offs. There is no one perfect. So you're going to have to determine what is most important for you and determine what fits that best. Now I have my two favorite optics that I currently use or that I have been using for the past few months, year, and that is the Trijicon SRO and the Holosun 509T. And so I want to talk a little bit more in depth about what I like about each one and then kind of the trade-offs you get with each and why this might be important to you, or it might be informative for you if you're looking for possibly purchasing one of these or upgrading to a red dot or moving on from something else besides the RMR. So we'll start with the SRO. The SRO does give us a lot of benefits, a lot of things that people were looking for. So it gives you that larger window. It gives you easier battery access with the top battery cap. You don't have the closed emitter, but that's not a deal breaker for a lot of people. A lot of people are so accustomed to the RMR, but just keep in mind, it is an open emitter. We do have great battery life out of it, and it is pretty clear, especially in the center. Because you have this larger window, you do have a larger area of the glass that is clear and without distortion. Now, with every optic that I've come across, there is slight magnification. In the Trijicon, the SRO, it has the least amount of magnification, in my opinion. But if you do get to the edge of the glass, you will see more distortion, you'll see magnification, and that just comes down to just the nature of how the glass is shaped. Now, one of the downsides to the SRO is that if you're looking to use it in a duty situation, namely guys who are actually doing this for a profession, you're running something like a Safariland holster, this is not compatible with Safariland. Most guns and Safariland holsters, it's not compatible with. So for me, like, I can't run an SRO on a 2011 in a Safariland holster. It's just not there yet because of how much it sticks over. It can create issues with the lockup and it just doesn't fit in there properly. You can make modifications to the holster to make it work, but just something to keep in mind. But if somebody who's carrying for EDC or just using it for competitive shooting, great optic. Now, the curious thing about the SRO, and I think it's worth noting while we're on the topic, is that Trijicon developed what might have been the greatest optic that never was. And it was the original SRO that never saw full production. It reached the point of even having marketing to the point where they were filming videos with shooters to put out for SHOT Show or whatever marketing schedule or plan they had, but it had a different SRO than the one we currently have. And that SRO had a titanium housing. It was a slightly smaller window, but it was quote unquote duty rated. And I think all the shortcomings, or the one thing that people always point at with the SRO, is that it's not duty rated. Now, yes, I did drop one off of a rooftop from, 3 stories up or whatever, and yes, it did break. It didn't completely shatter the housing. It was still intact. The dot still worked. Would it have worked in a life and death situation? Sure. We believe the zero was still on, but it's one of those things that people like to poke at, that it's not a duty rated optic, but I think it'll stand up to 90%, 95% of what the RMR takes. I think the SRO will take. I think Jedi was the one who mentioned it, and I don't remember what video it's in, but he said, in his testing, everything he's put the SRO through, it has stood up to. There is a weak spot on the SRO that if you hit it just right, it doesn't even have to be hard, but if you hit it just right, it will crack the glass. The problem is nobody knows where that sweet spot is. And that's kind of the tricky part with the SRO. Outside of that, it's a phenomenal and fantastic optic to run on your pistol. And so I think it's one of my favorites. It's a great option to run. So if you're looking for that and being an open emitter isn't an issue for you, then I would definitely look at the SRO. I'll leave a link down below for all the optics that we talk about. I'm not gonna deep dive into specs of all of them. You can read all those on the website. But yes, great option. We get everything that we wanted, the improvements on or being equal to the RMR. Now, it doesn't have quite the same battery life the RMR does, but at 3 years, at what it's rated for at whatever level, it's still a great option. You're still not gonna, as long as you're changing it once a year, you should be fine. I have yet to change the battery in this one, and it's been awesome. If you're somebody who needs or wants the closed emitter, I would say the best option on the market right now is gonna be the 509T from Holosun. I know there's gonna be a lot of people who complain and say the Chinese company, this and that. We'll hit on that in a minute. But what it does give us is it gives us the larger window, larger than the RMR. We're gonna have easier battery access, so we're getting the side tray, not having to take the optic off to change the battery out. We do have that great battery life. It is a closed emitter, so while you may have water or dirt or whatever on the outside of the optic, it's not going to actually obstruct the emitter and create that starburst effect or that multiple where you have multiple dots projected on your glass. Now, one thing it doesn't do very well is clarity or distortion. It does have more magnification than other optics in the market, and I think that's just going to be the quality of glass. You're going to get that little bit of distortion. The glass is clear-ish, but it is more noticeable. So when you look at something like a circle object, you're gonna see more of that distortion. You're gonna see, it is somewhat clear. You don't have as much tint to it, but you notice the magnification and distortion, especially around the edges of it. And I think it's more noticeable given that it is this kind of like rectangular shape as opposed to like the big circle of the SRO. Because if you compare the edge clarity of the SRO to the edge clarity of the 509, to me, they look very similar. But I think it's just more noticeable due to the shape and given the size of the window in the SRO. One other thing that I'd like to mention about the 509T that I see as kind of a downside is that the mounting solution. Now, I do like the mounting solution because it's better than the 2 posts that you get on the Trijicon. Because what happens is inevitably, guys aren't supposed to be racking this off of cars. It was never designed to do that. And these screws were never designed to take that sort of tension or to take that angle of deflection to stand up to that over time when you're doing it over and over again. That's why you see guys shear bolts off all the time. But with the mounting system that the 509T has, I think it eliminates a lot of that and you're not getting that same stress on this mounting system. The problem being is you have to mount this on an adapter plate in order to mount it on an RMR. So the solution you have would be either you can direct mount it. So you go to somebody like Vulcan Machine Works who can direct mount or direct cut your slide for a 509, but you're stuck with it. And the other option would be you run the plate on a plate. Now the downside to that is if you run the plate on a plate, you lose the use of your iron sights, which for a lot of people that may be a deal breaker. But depending on which gun or which platform you're running, like if you're running like the Staccato has a plate that still incorporates iron sights, and I think it still works. There are others out there that may still work, so you just have to determine for you whether or not that's a deal breaker. The big issue being that it's a Chinese company, say, well, people, it's cheap, you can't trust it, this or that. Actually, in the process of filming this, I actually got sent a text message from a buddy who was on range, and they had a 509 window fall out. Wiseman Company have had a multitude of 509s break or have issues with them where water got into it. But that being said, again, every brand across the board over the past year has had QC issues. So we've seen, I got one SRO directly from purchase, brand new, that did not work. Out of the box, it was dead. I've had other people see the same thing. I've had people get SROs or RMRs that within a week or two, they no longer worked. And it wasn't a battery issue, it was just something going on, connectivity inside or whatever it was, it didn't work. So yes, there are QC issues across the board, but I think with any of these 3 optics, the brands will take care of you. More so if you're purchasing from somewhere like Big Tex Ordnance, they will take care of you and help you get squared away to get a replacement so that you don't have issues with it. But I think that this is a better option than the Aimpoint because the P1, I think you still have a lot of those issues that many people weren't okay with. I think the battery issue being the biggest one. So I just don't think it's worth it for the price. Now the P2, I know a lot of people are gonna say, well, what about the P2? If the P2 is everything that they say it will be, if it's everything that people are chalking it up and it has all the features, it may very well be the best pistol optic on the market. But we won't know until there's a bunch of them in consumers' hands, right? Because we can do all the testing, we can do the drop test, we can do the battery life test, we can do everything with it to see, but what we ultimately need is that large sample size from the consumers to determine whether or not this is actually going to be a viable optic. And right now, nobody has them, right? So it's great, but if you can't get it, it doesn't really matter. So once more people have it, we can kind of see and determine at that point, but time will tell with that one. But as of right now, I think if you're looking for something, you can't go wrong with the SRO and you can't go wrong with the 509T. But if you need something that is the ultimate, like I need to know it's gonna work, like durability, dependability, just tried and true, the RMR is still, I think, the gold standard. But if you want to improve on some of those features, these two other optics, I think, would be much better.
The donut's a little bit easier to find, but it can be distracting, I guess, if you want a precise shot. But to get up on it quickly, it's a lot easier to find than just the dot. And it's easier to find than like the RMR for sure.
Any distortion, anything, any negatives?
No distortion.
It looks like
maybe a little bit of distortion. It kind of has the blue tint to it, but it still looks pretty nice. And for being the size that it is, similar to the SRO, it's not bad. It's easy to find and very natural.
I mean, it's easy to track, although I didn't shoot it with just the dot. It has the whole donut on it. I mean, for me, I think that the blur is just almost distracting. And it happened when I looked at Connell's on his staccato for the first time. I was like, man, that's weird, and you know, 2 panes of glass and all that stuff. But I think I'm just so used to other single plane optics. I don't necessarily like the blur. It almost looks like I'm kind of looking through the bottom of a cup. And like the edge distortion on the target seems to have like a minor zoom to it and stuff. I don't like it. I don't like it.
I've always liked the 509T. The circle dot makes it a lot quicker to get up on close targets. This one does have the distortion thing. My other one doesn't. This is probably my number 2 favorite optic, just because it has a circle dot and it's closed emitter, and it's huge.
What's your number 1?
SRO.
So those are my 2 favorite optics. If you're interested in purchasing one of those or any accessories for your firearms or any gifts for yourself this holiday season or maybe someone else, make sure you check out Big Tex Ordnance. Make sure you hit that like, subscribe, karate chop that bell so you get notified every time I upload a video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
What happened, Daddy?
Well, you've been yelling. What do you have on you, dude? Come here.
What happened, Daddy?
Well, you've been yelling in the background of this video the whole time. Can you at least say hi?
Hi!
Can you tell them what do you want for Christmas?
A Christmas tree and Mommy house and then Daddy house and then the Christmas.
Okay. So, but what do you want for Christmas? Do you want Lego Mario? Do you want Marble Run? Do you want race car? Because maybe somebody will buy it for you. You got to tell them though.
Lego Mario!
Lego Mario?
Yeah.
Okay, that's it? No Marble Run? No race car?
Okay.
Okay, just Lego Mario. Okay, cool. All right, well, tell them Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving! Merry Christmas!
Oh, you okay, buddy?
I'm okay.
Okay.